Honey,
So full.
it's just grass.
Oh, it's so much more than just grass. It's a healthier, greener, and more luscious lawn. Yours can be too.
Look at you.
With Kabursky Brothers Lawn Care.
Remember, no shoes on the lawn. Because you're so beautiful.
Call or click today.
Scott Dochterman. Chad Leistikow. Together on one pod, talking Hawks and all things Big Ten. Powered by GameDay Men's Health. With locations in Ankeny, West Des Moines, and North Liberty. From the Channel Seed Studios, this is Legends and Listeners. Exclusively on Iowa Everywhere.
Hey, Hawkeye fans, Big Ten fans, and Iowans everywhere. As you guys know, we record Legends and Listeners on a Wednesday, and this Wednesday has been nutso, Scott Dochterman. I'm Chad Leistikow of the Des Moines Register, Scott Dochterman of The Athletic. We had coordinator availabilities. We've got a new quarterback at Iowa, a new point guard for the Iowa women. Amazingly, Ben McCullum's team kind of went under the radar for a minute. But Scott Dochterman, episode 90, we're going to kick off with the House settlement news, which throws a whole wrench potentially into everything we've talked about for months. So you take it away.
Yeah, today, Judge Claudia Wilken issued a notice in a filing that she is giving both parties 14 days to figure out how to adjust roster limits and phase them in as opposed to just cutting people off right now, or she will deny the settlement. Every other point seems to be good for how this is going to go. The money's fine, and she has no problem with the roster limits into the future. But the fact is, and we've seen it right now with football in particular, that we're going from, about 130, 135 players at Iowa to 105. And it's like that at a lot of places in the Midwest that are developmental schools. And it's like that in a lot of sports as well, that there are imposed roster limits. And so she wants some sort of a plan that phases it in. And both the attorneys, when they answered those questions to Wilken a week and a half ago, said that there's just no way they could alter anything. Well, today she said, I give you 2 weeks or I will deny the settlement unless that gets resolved. And so the strategy of, we'll just tell her we can't do it, wasn't going to work. Imagine that, NCAA. So they've got 2 weeks to figure this out. You do not want to blow this at all, because if you go to trial, you're not talking about $2.8 billion. You're talking about $20.8 billion that you may be paying. And it could just completely bankrupt the entire industry, every single program, and change college sports forever in a much more negative way. So 2 weeks to figure this out. They better figure it out.
I mean, I know you don't know what's in her head, but what is the main, why do they have to be phased in from her perspective? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, I watched a lot of the arguments and the objections, and most of them were based on athletes saying, "I'm losing my roster spot. I was going to be a walk-on at this place where they allowed 80 runners, and now they can only allow X number of runners." I'd have to look up. I have the list, but now they're all those spots. Players getting cut. We've seen it at Iowa, where Iowa was one of the more transparent programs, because back in the fall told, probably 40 plus players, we can't guarantee your roster spot for next year. Now that what's going on is and this is on every sports that have extra players, that they're going to be held down to a tighter women's basketball, strong 15. You're not going to have walk-on types. So this is a way to phase it in, so then all those athletes just don't get wiped out in one.
I see. Okay. Well, it kind of hurts. I mean, in a way, it hurts Iowa football for being proactive a little bit, potentially. I mean, that was one thing I think Kirk Ferentz indicated, that Iowa was sort of ahead of the, kind of almost doing the right thing in their mind, like letting guys know where they stand. Like, I can't guarantee you a 105 spot, so you may want to look elsewhere. Whereas other programs have been Not all, but like a lot of other programs are like, well, we're just going to have a bunch of spring tryouts and then we'll cut you at the end of spring. Well, it seems like those football schools may end up benefiting potentially. I mean, I guess in the short term, it would allow Iowa to, I guess, absorb some more walk-ons maybe. I mean, maybe guys that, maybe entered the portal, maybe to come back. I don't know, like what that means exactly, but I don't know. It's kind of silly to make them change this late in the game, but oh well, I get it. They got to do it, right? They have to find a way.
They have to find a way, and I'm not opposed to this at all, because I think that what they have done is it's not really ripped up. It's not really ripping off the Band-Aid. It's ripping off the Band-Aid with skin attached to it. I mean, this was pretty harsh, particularly for football, but for a lot of other sports. And the objections were pretty strong that recruited players and then athletes and signing letters of intent or agreeing to financial aid agreements. And then next thing you know, they're sorry, we just don't have a roster spot based on the House settlement. And so that's her ruling has been, and she discussed this with them over and over and over again, and they completely ignored her. So now it's
okay.
Do or
all
die.
Right.
So it's, I guess I look at it from Iowa's perspective is right now they're at about, I think, 105 or 106 after two recent commitments this week, well, 3 counting one last Friday. And so they could still climb up a little bit more. I don't think that there's a problem with that. And it probably isn't the worst thing in the world not to go to 130 and maybe be at 113 instead. So I think they can climb up there, and then there's a couple other guys now that would be safe. There's some guys that are in the portal that haven't been claimed yet, or haven't
matriculated.
Haven't moved over, which is probably not a great sign that they should be at Iowa. There's a lot that ended up in South Dakota State and UNI, but not a lot that ended up in another school. And I think you might want to probably move on from them anyway.
Okay, well, I appreciate the update. As always, Scott and I are coming at you from the Channel Seed Studios, only on Iowa Everywhere. We are presented by GameDay Men's Health. Scott, big week for Iowa football beyond the House settlement. This is traditionally, I get excited about this week because we get the coordinators usually 2 or 3 days before the open practice, and then the practice itself, a lot of information gathering. You start to, I just think the coordinators, in particular, the offensive coordinator, this current offensive coordinator is very forthcoming with information. And to me, it's been a really valuable spring session for me. Where do you want to start in terms of, we heard from Tim Lester, Phil Parker, and LeVar Woods. I mean, Lester to me was just, every answer was filled, packed with a lot of info and insight and honestly, like excitement about where this offense is. So I would like to start there, I think. Yeah,
let's do that. I thought it was, it was wide ranging. It was really interesting. It always is to me, and how he's going to put this together. Year 2, the changes that are in place. Chad, what was kind of your main takeaway? Let's start there. What was the one thing that you really took away from this, from what Tim Lester said and people should know about?
Yeah, I mean, it was honestly my question, I think, that really kicked it off. I mean, I'm not crediting my question, but the answer to my question, yeah. Do we have like a little applause back there, Aiden, for back patting myself? Yeah. I just asked him kind of, because he had talked like, I think it was like whatever the bye week was last year in the middle of the season, he was like, the passing game it's just going to take the longest in the Shanahan system. It just is. And especially because he didn't really have the quarterbacks to pull it off. And so I just kind of asked him, how far have you come? I mean, obviously Gronowski's not throwing passes out there. Brendan Sullivan isn't throwing passes. So you've got Hank Brown, Jackson Stratton, and Jimmy Sullivan are your quarterbacks. So how much progress have you made in this passing game? And his answer reflected what we heard last week from Iowa wide receivers, which I don't think we got to discuss on our show, which was, it's like, it's such a world of difference. I mean, we heard that from Seth Anderson, from Reese Vanderzee. Caden Weechin in particular was really bullish about where this passing game was going. And again, I'm thinking like, Hank Brown's throwing you passes. Like, this isn't like, Gronowski's out there slinging it. It's like, no, this this passing game is starting to click. And so Leicester's answer to me was like, the guys are just running routes now. They're faster. We're running the same plays, but now they're like working, and they're more explosive and they're more downfield. And we can run the same play, but make it look 10 different ways eventually. And I'm thinking to myself, yes. Yes, that's the vision. Like, make something look different and then run the same play. I mean, that's what Sean McVay is known for. Obviously, his buddy and former boss, Matt LaFleur, does a great job of that in Green Bay. Kyle Shanahan, of course, outstanding at that as well, with Brock Purdy pulling the strings out in San Francisco. So, that just gets me excited as kind of an NFL nerd anyway. And just understanding when you get the scheme right, that really it can be a really fun thing to watch, and it feels like it's starting to enter that phase as with the players, and that they're realizing it now too. They're kind of all realizing it together. Like Dayton Howard was in a meeting, and he's like, well, I knew it was man coverage because of this and this, and it's like, yes, that's exactly what we want from everybody, and it takes a while to install, but man, it just seems like if they can get it, it could be pretty interesting for the Iowa offense this fall.
It certainly has happened. And that's something that I know I've had side conversations that it's been like, they're giving the defense all it can handle, and it's not. It's kind of a problem for the defense, and then you flip it to the other side. Well, does that mean the defense is an issue? Yeah, but not really. I mean, it's got a ways to go, but like Phil reminded, we're only 11th in scoring defense. We weren't historically good last year, and I think that's the kind of the same way here. What it means is that the offense can now play at game speed, which before it was playing at think and sort of play at game speed. And that's a really tough way to go when you're trying to, if you're a receiver and you're trying to read coverage and you're young and you're basically what you're thinking is, where do I need to go? And then you're trying to go, well, but I need to read the coverage. And then what if the defender steps here, I got to go here. Now they can just do it. And that is such a lift for an offense. And knowing that they have, an offense, you have a center who knows everything, Logan Jones. In fact, he brought up that he knows 99% of the coverages, even though he's a center. And you have, the best right tackle in college football in Jennings Dunker. And you've got all these pieces, but they are now competing with the defense, which I'm excited to see, because I think on Saturday, you're going to see the best competition out of these two teams. They were not, defense is going to want to prove a point. Offense is going to want to prove a point, and they're going to be competing really hard against each other. And it only can help. I mean, because Lord knows we've seen enough bad offense for a while, and I'm not even I'm being truthful, not unkind. It was bad in a lot of years. And I think this is a chance now. I mean, they averaged 27 points a game last year, almost 28. That's, 200 yards rushing a game. Now you move the passing game into that window, and that's kind of where they are right now in spring. Without having their starting quarterback available is really impressive with where they're going.
Yeah, and it's just when you listen to Tim Lester, you just feel like everything makes sense. Like there is a plan. It's I think he really likes the pieces at receiver. Like, and we look at those guys on the field like before games and stuff, and it's like, God, Jared Bowie, he looks like a guy. Dayton Howard looks like he could be something. And then you'd think, I mean, even like Terrell, I remember watching Terrell Washington just warm up at the bowl game. It's like, my God, that guy's quick. Like, he could be a real nice chess piece. And I know he's in the backfield now, but it's just like you get more and more pieces that you can use. Caden Weechin, he talked last week about one of the reasons he came back is because he kind of got promised that they're going to use him more in the passing game. And what did Tim Lester say today? He's like, yeah, Seth Anderson and Caden Weechin. Well, Seth Anderson healthy. There's a positive, too. And Caden Weechin, they're like running fast routes and downfield and like not looking behind them and, not second guessing themselves anymore. And, that's all. And then you get Sam Phillips in here. You got Reese Vanderzee. They showed a clip of him making like a back shoulder catch in the end zone the other day at practice. Who, by the way, like when I talked to him, like he just looked like an older guy now. Like last year, he looked like a freshman. Now he looks like a college football player now. And he talked about how he was like wishing he could run in a track meet because he feels so much faster now. And it's like, gets that year of strength and conditioning, and we know he's a great athlete. It's just, there's just a lot of like really positive indicators about this passing game. I'm excited to see it on Saturday. I don't think they'll show anything new, and they shouldn't show anything new, but let's see how they can execute the old stuff against the defense. And, I'm guessing it's going to be better than whatever McNamara was on Kids Day, which was like, I don't know, it was like 6 of 20 for 21 yards or something. I mean, it was god awful last year.
Yeah, it was FUBAR. No question about that. But, here's one of the quotes that he said that I think really goes a long way. He's like, we're able to make nuances, adjustments really quick. They can go out there on the next route. It's fixed. We're a little short on routes sometimes because we get excited and we get a lot of third down red zone situations where there's a little nuances that we got to get better at. But I've been very happy way their progression as we expected it to happen. Transcript's a little messed up there. But, and I think that's the important thing, that right now he is happy. And he appears that way, legitimately so. You could tell when coaches are a little edgy or whatever. He seems excited. And, this is a staff that's got a few new pieces in the analysts who now can coach. That's a different element that you can do. 2 guys that, have extensive experiences now with the Shanahan offense. And then, and then you also have, Warren Ruggiero,
Ruggiero, yep.
Ruggiero. I keep wanting to call him Warren G. He's got there trying to regulate, but
I understood that reference.
I know that's what us 50-year-olds do, but but to have the brain trust, understand how this system works, and you have Billy Voldemort, who is was at the Jets for 4 years and is kind of a guru in teaching zone run scheme. He coached O-line, tight ends. He was also with Tim Lester at Western Michigan. He got just like the whole staff got whacked out in at the Jets, and so he's an analyst here for a year, and that's a blessing because they speak the same language, and it's an odd language. So when you have those pieces, Omar Young has been in this system. And then, you also have Warren Ruggiero, who's an offensive coordinator for a long time, scored a lot of points at Wake Forest of all places. That's again, something that can help this team progress.
Yeah, one of the quotes Lester had that I plopped in my story that went online this morning, or Thursday morning, he said, he's talking about Billy Vandermerkt and also Warren Ruggiero, the 2 analysts. He said, like Matt LaFleur at Green Bay, he would never hire a guy unless he could help game plan. You need ideas. We're going to run the same plays a lot of ways, and finding more ways to run the same play and make it look different. The more ideas you can get, the better. These 2 guys have a ton of experience in running this exact system, so they've come in with immediate ideas. So, it just gets you excited. Because, again, we're not – I don't want to badmouth the past, overdo it or whatever, but it's just like we just saw, like, the same minimal concepts year over year over year, just with no new wrinkles, no fresh ideas, if they have 11 in the box, we got to run it anyway, you know what I mean? Like this seems like it just seems like you've taken an NFL, and you really have taken an NFL staff almost. Because think about last year, and I'm glad Lester mentioned this too, and I know we got to move on to other stuff, but he was like, I had to coach Abdul Hodge and George Barnett and John Budmeyer, like how to coach the Shanahan system. So it's like those guys are in year 2 now as well, and they understand better what needs to be done, how to coach their guys. It's all a progression. And it really is, in hindsight, kind of amazing what they pulled off last year with the rushing offense and Caleb Johnson with how limited the passing game was. So, to me, we're 14 months into Tim Lester now, 15, and it just seems like it's been just a tremendous hire.
Yeah, it was really, for as much as is panned early on, it really has been a godsend because he's marrying the tenets of Iowa's program and what it wants to establish with how to kind of get into the 21st century. And that's really important. You could still run zone and you can still block with the same physicality. It's just they just shifted their aiming points a little bit. Instead of when you're running outside slant or even the mid zone, it's not so much looking at play side number as it is screws on the helmet, and then your knee is still aimed at the midsection, and actually what really helped them last year was it enabled their line to get into their defender quicker, and those are things that he taught that the previous coordinator didn't teach. And that says a lot. And again, we looked at the passing game before versus now, and it's very, all of it's complicated, but it was like, this is really complicated, even more so than most at this level. And it's like, you're complicated in the worst in Big Ten history. What advantages are you doing here? It's the worst in 40 years offensively back 2 years ago. And I would argue that the eras are so different between 1984 Northwestern and 2023 Iowa that it's like, well, maybe you just need to do something different, and they have, and it shows with the transfer portal and growth and the new teaching ideas that you can really adapt and make things go quicker. Because they were still not a great offensive unit statistically, other than running the football. But it was miles better than it was like 90 yards better per game, and it was almost 13 points better per game. So I think this year they can take another step, and a pretty sizable one at that.
Yeah, and I'm pretty excited about the offensive line. As long as they're healthy, adding Bryce George, we teased that last week on our show. He did commit to Iowa not long after our show. It sounds like he's going to at least, he'll be in the competition, I guess. But I think they would hope that he's probably their starting left tackle, ideally. And then, I think Cade Pieper is going to be the right guard. He's, just the way his teammates talk about him. I got to talk to him last week about, you'll have to check out my story on him about castrating cows. That's a page turner, and how he wrestled cows to, so they can castrate him every May. He's going back home and and to do it. It's humane. I watched videos on it. It's not bad. But anyway, that's what he grew up doing, was like, basically wrestling these cows that are 200 pounds, and young cows, obviously.
The steers.
Bull calves, yeah. And
clamp them.
Yep. Someone else, I think, does the clamping. But anyway, his job was to kind of hold the thing down and get him still so they could do it, So So Bo Stevens was talking about how he can get in some crazy positions and still be powerful. And so, you're like, oh, yeah, well, that all makes sense now that you tell me the story about your upbringing. So anyway, I think he's going to be really good. He's the Solon hay bale champ. If you look at PFF, he was Iowa's highest graded player, period, last year. I know it was only 108 snaps, but the guy's clearly got some, he's undersized, but he's really strong. So, I feel great about the offensive line. What else kind of did you come away with from the coordinator, Scott?
Well, I think starting with that again, so I can add to the O-line here. Pieper was originally committed to North Dakota State as a defensive lineman, and then Iowa brought him in. He was really light, and then they bulked him up, but they really liked his attacking mentality. They thought that he was a lot like, a defender, playing offense, and that's what he's doing. And now, what long term? Is he a center or is he a guard? I guess it really doesn't matter at this point, but we'll see. But offensive line is, to me, it's night and day where we were a couple of years ago too, and that was kind of the hallmark of why the offense was as bad as it was, is the offensive line just wasn't there. But now you look and you have one of the best centers in the country in Logan Jones. You have one of the best tackles in the country. You have a veteran like Bo Stevens, who started the better part of this will be his third year starting, because he started almost his whole freshman year. If Bryce George wins left tackle, that to me is an interesting thought, is keeping Jennings Dunker on the right side as opposed to flipping him over to the left. And I think there's two ideas. One is if you keep him on the right side, you're solidifying your best punch on offense, which is running behind him, because he's a Zamboni out there. And then you look, if you flip it over, though, and it's like, well, and then you solidify your left tackle. That's supposedly your most important spot. Or you bring in this other guy who is an All-American, who is an elite player. He's kind of an Iowa build, he was a tight end, defensive end, built into an offensive lineman, went to Ferris State, which is a D2 power, and no sliding D2 football, man. There's some good players in it. And, the Ferris State could compete very well in the FCS, no question about it. And, if that way you get them on campus, you got to teach them technique anyway, the Iowa way to block. So you might as well do it from the opposite side and see what happens. And then chances are he's going to end up somewhere, but I would bet, I would be really surprised if, it's probably a good thing in some ways if somebody like Dotzler, beats him out, but I don't see that happening. I think he comes in, he starts a left tackle, and maybe somebody rotates with Pieper or maybe even Stevens a little bit just to get him in the game.
Yeah, I like the idea of Dunker at right tackle and Jones at center, because then you've got Pieper in the middle, the least experienced guy. You got Pieper between him, and so it kind of softens what he needs to do. He can just be more attacking, and those guys can help where needed type of thing, identify where Pieper might need help. And anyway, I feel great about the offensive line if it's healthy. As long as it's healthy, they're going to be good. And then I think one of the other most positive developments of this spring, Scott, has been actually a defensive tackle. I've heard really, really good things about both transfer portal ads. So I think, Jonah Pace, that was a huge concern of mine, defensive tackle. After losing Y.A. Black, I know how high you are on Y.A., and really they pretty much just played those two guys plus Pittman last year, right? I mean, it was a very thin rotation. And so you lose Black, and you're like, well, boy, like Graves is going to have to play both positions, but Pace and Bryce Hawthorne sound like they've been really revelatory, and Phil Parker even kind of let it slip that, either one of them could play in the first series of the season, and I'm fine with it. So that's a pretty good sign.
That's a great sign. I mean, that's where you want to be is having, players like that you bring in, and here they are, they're ready to go from day one. And because it is a very big concern for me, because Iowa's defense, even though it's kind of schematically back to front, it's always built front to back like every other one when it comes to how you win games, and that's stop the run. And the way that they do that is, they, of course, two gap up front and build it that way. So I think when we look and we see that they have potentially 4 and maybe more guys and that can play interior and play winning football there. Aaron Graves, I think, has got a chance to really take off and be his, be the Jared DeVries or something like that of this team. I really think that's possible. Jonah Pace, where does he fit in? Is he Nate Budgeta? Is he Jack Heflin? If he is, then that's great. That's exactly what you need. I think he's a little bit bigger than Budgeta. Budgeta was a salt of the earth kind of guy. Bryce Hawthorne, I think, has a little bit more physical build to him. Like a little more, looks the part a little bit more, but, he's still only a sophomore. Jeremiah Pittman's been in the wings for a long time and rotating, and then there's a couple of walk-ons. I think Will Hubert and Luke Gaffney are both guys that you could put in games and be okay with for short stretches. It's like, hey, you're a drive in the second quarter, they're at their own 11-yard line. It's like, well, all right, throw them in there for a series and see what we can get off the field type of thing. And kind of like throw somebody in at 8:39 before the next media timeout, and don't, center or something like that.
Right. Remember Louis Steck?
Yes,
he was
right.
He was a walk-on that Kelvin Bell kind of trusted, here and there. Minimal duty, but yeah.
Exactly. Just take some snaps, take some shots. Maybe, you don't even have to, it's like I was saying, like a walk-on center and, like a Riley Mulvey, or not even, it wasn't a walk-on, but a guy like that. It's like you go in with 50 seconds till the next media. It's like, just don't get ruined.
Yeah, right.
if you got a foul, fine. I mean, in defensive tackles situation, it's like if you got to get ran over, that's okay. Don't jump off sides. Don't face mask anybody. Get in the way.
Yeah.
Let somebody else make a tackle. And stuff like that.
Yeah. Cornerback, I think, is probably my biggest concern on defense. I know probably glossing over like replacing Jay Higgins and Nick Jackson probably a little too much. I still feel good about Jaden Harrell and Carson Shire if they're healthy. Corner. But the good news was Phil Parker seemed kind of like more bullish on TJ Hall, and I've heard really good things, as we both expected, about Zach Lutmer and Cohen Entringer. And then you throw Xavier Wampa, who I think he's in a boot right now, so I don't think he's going to play Saturday. But, if you got Wampa, Lutmer, and Entringer, I feel really good about. I think that combo of safeties and cash will be better than last year's combo of safeties and cash, and I don't say that lightly. I think Entringer and Lutmer are going to be fantastic.
Yeah, I think they are certainly faster and quicker and more athletic than what we saw with, I think Sebastian Castro is a guy who's going to make an NFL roster. He might play sub packages, certainly as a special teamer. I think he's really good at that level. But I think when I look at Cohen Entringer, I see a Dane Belton. I see a Amani Hooker, and that's really good. That's starter NFL caliber. And I think I see the same type of thing with Lutmer. Is an incredible athlete. I'm not going to put him in Cooper DeJean's category because there's nobody like that. But I see that kind of point to him. And so, two legit starters. And with Xavier, you're just like, it's going to come out at some point, right? He's got the ability, hopefully for him, he puts it all together this year. And if he can do that, then that trio, cash, safety, free safety is really going to be, really tremendous, in fact. And then, as we said, TJ Hall has kind of been the ascending player at corner, probably in that Matt Hankins and Michael Ojemudia category. And now you got to concentrate on the other one. And Deshaun Lee has a lot of experience, so he's still only going to be a junior this year. He's had only a couple of years of action, and then you've got some young guys behind him. Alex Moda flipped over, and he looks like he's doing well. He's always had the length and the size. He might be like a Greg Maben type, that's a good, comparison for him. Yeah. And then finally, there's going to be another cornerback. It looks like it's going to be coming in from South Dakota. It hasn't been signed, but I guess all signs are pointing that he might be coming in, and he's played out at St. Thomas More and has a good relationship with Jason Manson and other players. So,
yeah, I was reading up on him. Looks like a guy you bring in to compete. Not necessarily going to be an automatic starter, but yeah. It seems like they're searching a little bit at that second corner, and that's again, I don't think Deshaun Lee should take that as a huge slight. I mean, they weren't that good last year in pass defense, especially without Jermari. I mean, it was a struggle. I mean, gosh, look at that Michigan State game last year. It was a disaster with T.J. Hall and John Nestor, who's now with your boy P.J. Fleck, right?
Yeah. row the boat.
Yeah.
Baby.
So it'd be interesting. I mean, it's just you always feel okay about the defense just because it's Phil Parker, Seth Wallace, Kelvin Bell. You just feel like it's going to be fine. But I don't know. Kind of exciting to maybe think that maybe the offense is getting the upper hand of them this year. So that's cool. Anyway, speaking of upper hands, get the upper hand on your health with GameDay Men's Health. We really love our partners at GameDay. My day is Wednesday to stop by the West Des Moines office. And, they know me obviously pretty well by now since I'm there every week. But just always nice to see a friendly face. Quick service and just get what you need. And GameDay Men's Health can just help you, turn your health around. Honestly, increased testosterone does so much for your life in terms of weight loss, in terms of just your energy to go work out. It improves your mood. It's just like you feel like you are in your 20s again. I know that's their slogan, but it really is legit. And I wouldn't say that. I don't say that lightly. I'm just winging it right here. I'm not reading anything. Give our partners at GameDay Men's Health a try. GameDayMen'sHealth.com. They have offices in West Des Moines, North Liberty, Ankeny, all great offices, great people, oftentimes the same people, but it's really cool. And I've every single time it's like, you guys, a lot of your listeners come visit us, so we really appreciate you guys giving them a shot, and hopefully it's improved your lives as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the results for me are pretty self-evident, and I'm right around 45 pounds down since I started this with some other stuff, and haven't felt this light and fluffy, not fluffy anymore than than what I was when for no, seriously, I haven't been like this since college, so I really enjoy it. And I'm better looking now that I'm into my 50s, but
exactly, we all get more handsome with age.
Yeah, I guess and
with higher T.
Right, we all have a running bet who's the hottest journalist in the group chat, but but
my goodness,
more plans for us. But
right. Yeah. One more thing on football on my list, but if you got other stuff, let's bring it up. I love the fact that Drew Stevens can hit from 68. LeVar Woods saying, he can hit from 68. It's like, okay, yeah. Well, let's try that next year instead of having Cade throw the Hail Mary then. How about maybe?
Yeah.
But and he said comfortably in a game, 58. So, again, 40-yard. It's just a matter of whether Kirk Ferentz will do it. But, man, what a weapon that could be. Like, if you really leaned into it, I mean, like the Dallas Cowboys do with Brandon Aubrey. I mean, they just they get to the 45 and it's like you're in field goal. It's like you cross midfield and you're in field goal range.
Yeah.
If you're at the 40, you're in field goal range. Like, you don't have to do a coffin corner punt. Get your 3 points. If he's going to make 8 out of 10, take the kick.
I could see them getting to the 36-yard line and Kirk on most days and Kirk saying okay. But I can't see him when they get to the 40, even though he could probably make it from there, unless it's a end of half situation, and that's different. But because Kirk is, as he is risk averse, no question about it, and so his thought process will be something in the thought of, but if he misses it, then we give him the ball at the 40, and I want our defense to be able to
I know
something different. But that said, that's really good. I mean, that's he went out there and he punched it last year against Nebraska. That was huge, and but 53-yarder at the gun. So I mean, when you have that kind of a weapon, and you look at this special teams unit, you look holistically, Chad, at this team, and yes, there are question marks, but they're not gigantic question marks. I mean, how do you replace Jay Higgins? We just don't know that until the fall. You could be concerned about it, but you're going to have somebody who's talented, and they'll see what happens. I mean, to me, it was actually more concerning replacing Jack Campbell than Jay, even though Jay was every bit as productive. Jack is so different physically that you can't replicate what he did in some respects. And Jay is a hard hitter, heart and soul of the team. I wish him well this weekend, but just a different physical body, I guess. And so you can kind of replicate that, although he is a heck of a player, no question about it. But I see enough potential in all of these areas. I mean, you talk about special teams, punting, much better hands this year than Iowa was a year ago at this time, replacing Torrey Taylor, an all-time great. Drew Stevens. Last year, you're questioning, okay, what a mental block. No, none of that anymore. Long snapper is an issue, but then they also, again, Bryant Worrell, who LeVar couldn't talk about, is committed to Iowa. He's from Boston College. I would anticipate with one more year left, he'll be your long snapper, and Ike Speltz will be your backup. But so you feel pretty good there. Special teams. It's like
Weechin. Don't forget Weechin.
I know. I was just saying that you have the best kick returner, All-American kick returner returning, who returned a kick in a bowl game for a touchdown. And then you look at offense, much better. Now, you're going to lose Caleb Johnson. You're not going to replace him per se. But I think Kamari Moulton and Jazz Patterson and TJ Washington all provide you with that punch. And I wrote this week, Chad, about the 18 quarterback situations in the Big Ten and how Iowa not how Iowa stacks up, but just how everybody stacks up, within the Big Ten. And I would say Iowa is in decent shape at that position group. Because when you kind of go through it, and I wouldn't want to talk about it. Just
where would you put him? Yeah, I put that on our list. Where would you put him, Gronowski? Do you think? I would honestly, I'd put him at right around 4 or 5. Yeah.
And just coming in, and it could go down or up. It's just it's a little bit of a guess because he's new, but I mean, based on Penn State would be number 1 with Drew Aller. However, when you look at what he did in his 3 losses, he completed 53% of his passes for 169-yard average, 3 touchdowns and 4 interceptions, and against both Oregon and Ohio State, or Oregon and Notre Dame, he had a chance to win or tie, but threw game-losing interceptions in the final 100 seconds. And then he threw an incomplete pass on 4th and goal, the one at the Ohio State. His clutch gene isn't there yet. Maybe it is this year. Luke Altmaier, to me, is number 2, and he might even be number 1. He's really good, I think, in Illinois. Washington has a tremendous quarterback in Damon Williams. He's going to be special. He's the type of guy that everybody's going to go, wow, he might be he might be a September Heisman guy. I don't know about November, and then I would put him right there with Dylan Raiola, who had a good year, not a great year for Nebraska. He was but he has otherworldly physical gifts. But, you've got him, you got Gronowski, you got Raiola, you got Aiden Childs, who I think is a little up and down. Will Fernando Mendoza, go from Cal to Indiana, and will he have that kind of a good year that he did last year? Billy Edwards going to Wisconsin, what kind of transfer is he? He was good. He had great numbers, but almost 3,000 yards. But then you look at the big dogs, and like Oregon, they're putting in Dante Moore. He was a 5-star. Bryce Underwood, number 1 player in the country this year as a true freshman. Julian Sayin, a 5-star. What are those guys going to be like?
Right.
Minnesota.
Well, then Nico Iamaleava, don't forget him.
Yeah. Oh no,
UCLA.
I wrote about Nico.
Yeah.
I wrote about them on this weekend. That blew my Saturday.
Sorry.
Yeah. So you've got, and Drake Lindsay at Minnesota is a redshirt freshman, and he was a guy that they actually brought in, a Georgia Tech transfer, and he couldn't dislodge him at all. And so Zach Pyron ended up transferring to South Alabama already. So I think there's some good quarterbacks, but I'm not going to put Mark Gronowski at the back seat of this. I think he's got as impressive of a resume as anybody else. And if this offense can run the football the way I anticipate it will, and the passing game is growing the way we think it is, he's going to put up some numbers. And this team has some tough games.
Yeah.
But they're at a snake pit known as Kinnick Stadium. So, playing Oregon and Penn State at home, those aren't games they're going to be favored in. But we've seen good teams come to Kinnick and struggle a little bit. And, including South Dakota State when Mark Gronowski was a quarterback there.
Yeah, it is a tough schedule. And honestly, like all this excitement about the offense, or intrigue, I guess you could say, we'll see what it means, week 2 at Iowa State. That'll be kind of when they need to be ready by. So got about 4.5 months, maybe 4.5 months to that game. So that makes still time, but they're kind of
take a drink.
Drink a great water, yeah. Still time, but they're kind of, it does hurt not having Gronowski out there completely. Good talk on spring football. We'll have more, obviously, next week as we recap the draft and recap the spring game on next week's Legends and Listeners. But do want to move into men's basketball, and Alvaro Folgueras, the big man from Robert Morris, Ben McCullum's roster continues to build, and Bennett Sturts was always going to be the number 1 pickup, but this would be your number 2 pickup. This is a really, really good player. Also has 2 years left, so that's an upside bonus of this thing. He's like 6'9", 215, but if you guys listened to my McCullum podcast a few weeks ago, like strength and conditioning is like a huge deal to McCullum, and I expect that this guy in an Iowa strength program over the next 6 months is going to look a little bit more like a Big Ten player and probably keep most of his athleticism. That's kind of how it usually works. So real excited about this pickup. I mean, it's exactly what Iowa needed.
I I don't, it's like I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. I mean, I think we've had a very positive conversation about football, and I'm like, I got to like restrain myself a little bit on this. And part of it is, I trust CJ Moore, one of our national writers. His opinions matter to me, and when it comes to basketball, because he has no reason to think anything. But he thinks Iowa's a top 25 team now based on their additions. And you're talking about 8 new guys coming in.
Wow!
But the way that they have put in, he wrote on Wednesday about how Iowa, or about the winners and losers of the portal. He's already got Iowa as a winner. Iowa still has at least 4 more spots.
They're at 9. They're at 9. They're going to get a 10th here with Tate Sage whenever he commits, or whenever he's announced. But
yeah, right. But you look at this is when we had Ben McCollum on Iowa Live a week ago. Mm-hmm. One of the things I asked him about was the differences between, is it easier now because of the portal, or is it more difficult now because of the portal to put a team together like this? Because in the older days, players weren't going to move as much because they didn't want to sit out for a year. But now they're all go, but you can bring in who you want. You can, that sort of thing. And you look at the pieces, you can see the reason why he's bringing these pieces in. And Iowa, for all the, what about your NIL? That's gone. Iowa's paying. I was out there getting guys. I mean, Sturts, of course, is an All-American caliber guy, but I think Fougaris is as important almost as important as Sturts, in this, because he hit 14 points, 9 rebounds, 41% from 3. He is like the ultimate stretch 4 you can find. 6'9", his game translates to any level. And people are saying, yeah, I was good in the Horizon League and Robert Morris, but what about this? Well, also remember, that Janae Broom was at Morehead State, and Walter Clayton was at Iona. These players are pretty good. And I look at him, and I know how he plays, and he was Horizon League Player of the Year. He's going to come in and 3.2 assists at that position.
Right.
So he does
ton of boards
everything.
Too.
Yeah. And then you look at, Hausen from Kansas State.
Yeah.
He's a
Hassan. I found out that's Hassan, but anyway,
Hassan.
Go ahead.
Okay, good. Thank you for letting me know on that, because I didn't want to say it wrong again. Hassan Pfeffer.
Yeah.
He's a rabbit. But yeah, the way he shoots from 3. And then you throw on, so it's like, okay, these are the pieces that he wants. He wants a 3-point shooter. He wants somebody who's versatile, who can do everything at a 4 that maybe like a 3 usually does, but he has the size of a 4. And now it's probably needs a big man, just somebody get in the way in the post, because you're going to need that. You're going to need fouls in the post in the Big Ten. But they've got the guts of a really good roster. This is one that can, and because they defend the way they do and the way they shoot with these guys, it can be highly efficient as well, and a completely different style of basketball that we've seen, really in, going back to the 90s probably.
Yeah, it's going to be, the more it builds, the more fun it seems like it's going to be. And, listen to Bryson Williams on a podcast with Tom Kakert the other day, and he was outstanding. If you want to get excited about Ben McCollum, just listen to that podcast. Just the way he teaches, you just feel good about the way he's going to approach everything. It just seems like ultra competitive, gets the most out of every play. It really does kind of sound like an Iowa football theme, like you're getting the most out of every guy, getting the most strength and condition. It's just, it's kind of the way Iowa has to build. It's always going to probably be that way. They're never going to have as much money as Kansas or Duke or whatever. Or Indiana. Right. So, you're going to have to win with a little bit less, but it's also kind of fun when you do. So, anything more on hoops? Go ahead.
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up, Chad, is that, I can say that Fran, I think, is an outstanding coach, and he coaches a very entertaining style of basketball. But in some ways, I've always thought that is that doesn't fit right with here. And mainly because you've got to recruit in your semicircle of about 6 hours. And in order to play that kind of fast-paced basketball up and down the floor, transition 80 points a game, you're going to have great athletes who can defend the opposite area. Otherwise, you're expending so much energy, and if you're not a great athlete, it's not easy to play. And I think that probably caught up with them on the defensive end of the floor way too often because you just couldn't do it right. However, if you tone it down a little bit, be a little more efficient, hone in on your defense, but channel, better, more efficient offense. Although Fran's offenses were really good too, but I think you can take that step because you look at the players that you're able to get and develop in this region, that they will fit that style of basketball. That's why I thought Wisconsin under Bo Ryan and now Greg Gard, he's been very good too, have been able to win and sustain excellence because they recruit to their system and their system allows players like that to be successful. And I think sometimes a Peyton Sandfort, for instance, he was really good for Fran. I think he'd be special for Ben McCollum because that style of play fits his skill set better.
Yeah, it's almost too bad Price Sanford didn't stay. I mean, I realize where Price left. He's a big Fred Hoiberg fan, got a lot of money there. Nothing against him, but it would have been fun to see Price in McCollum's system for sure. You had Jan Jensen on your Iowa Live show on 9.2 on Monday night. Iowa women make some big news on Wednesday with the commitment of Chazadi Chit-Chat Wright out of Georgia Tech. She is a big point guard. We've been talking about they need a point guard, they need a point guard, they need a point guard. And you were telling me that Jan had to cut out of your On Iowa Live show because Chit Chat was in town.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. And the interview was great, by the way. So good job by you guys.
Yeah.
You and Chelsea Brown. Yeah.
Right. Thank you. Usually when the big coaches come to the set of On Iowa Live, where we have it at Union Station in Cedar Rapids, and it's well attended. And this one was probably more well attended even than Ben McCollum the week before. I mean, people love Jan, and usually they stick around, they sign autographs. And Ben couldn't do it either because he had recruits, that he was trying. And I think everybody understood that. I was like, hey, you got a team to build here. But Jan was like beforehand, she was like holding court even when we were doing like our live hit at 6:20 on KCRG Sports, and she was holding court and everybody was talking and cheering and stuff like that. And then. But she kind of had to rush out of there, and she didn't have chance to sign autographs, to talk to people, and she felt really, really bad about that because, and I talked to her in between one of the breaks. I'm like, so, is Chit Chat around? And it's like, yeah, she's down in Iowa City right now, and we really want her, and stuff that we can't run publicly with. But, this is a big get for them. I mean, small in stature, but feisty, and 5'4", kind of reminds me a little bit maybe of Molly Davis in that kind of regard. But you need somebody who can distribute, and she's really quick. I think that's going to be important. And I think she looks like she can embrace that role. Didn't have great numbers from three. It was only her freshman year at Georgia Tech. That's the ACC. That's a good league. That's a big time league. So, but she did have 4.
I mean, they made the tournament. She started 12 games, Yeah. It's a good player.
Exactly. So I think this is a really good move for them because one of the things that Jan impressed upon us in that, on that show and otherwise is there's a lot of impatience. People are starting, in fact, when I took that screenshot or just took that shot of me, with her and Chelsea, and people are like, you better hold her feet to the fire about, why she hasn't got anybody. And it's like, it's not magic. You've got to make it work in different ways. And there's a player in particular, I can't say who, I know who it is, that was getting shopped around, and the starting price was $750,000. And they're like, I don't think we're going to go for that. Mm-hmm. But top tier talent, no question about it. But you're just not going to, with Iowa, you can't just make that happen, because unless you go outside the lines. But I think this is, Chad, I don't know. I like this makeup now. They still have a lot of pieces they got to replace. And they have people who are in, kind of secondary roles. They got to make a big step up, because we all see Lucy Olson. That's going to be hard to replace just because of the way she impacted games. Not as impossible as Caitlin Clark, but still very difficult. Sydney Falter is one, that I look at and I go, are they going to find, who's going to step in for Sid as just a junkyard dog, tough as nails, will do anything. I compared her senior year to that of Erin White. I just felt like she had that kind of impact on the women's team. And do they have a player who could step into that? And, could Tegan Malini, that would be one that I think, can you push it forward? Taylor Stremlow, she's kind of in that same, IQ is beyond everybody else's at her age. Could she step in and be a performer like that? What about some of the newer players? Addie Deal's obviously going to be a number, a 2 guard and star there. But so I don't know. What do you think, Chad?
Well, first off, I know from listening to Jan's interview and from just some side conversations that it has been, a challenge, to dealing with the age. She talked about it on your show, dealing with the agents and just how it's just not, it's like the most disenchanted she's ever been with the profession, but she gets it. And they're trying to, they've got their culture that they're not going to budge on. And I appreciate that. And I think that, as much as everyone wants them to go get, the best players, like you can't, if they're not going to pay that, top dollar and they're willing, they just don't want to sacrifice what they've built, I guess. Mm-hmm. And so I got to talk to Chit Chat right on Wednesday. I talked to her on the phone for a little while, and everything I've heard about her from other people too is that she is the type of fit that you want, like a real nice kid. Talking to her on the phone, she's just like, it wasn't about me. It was about, how I can help the team, Like, I just want to be a part of that. And she saw herself, obviously, as somebody that Iowa needed, a program that she does know a lot about because of Caitlin Clark. Like it's a prominent national program. They've been in 2 of the last 3 national title games. And now she gets to obviously follow her assistant coach, Lysandra Barrett. That obviously was a crucial link here from Georgia Tech, replacing Raina Harmon. And she's going to be their ball handling point guard. She played about 25 minutes a game last year. So, playing a lot of minutes. But she's not going to have to do it all. Addie Deal's going to be able to play some 1. If you had to play McCabe or Stremlow a few minutes at the 1, you could do that too. But now at least Addie Deal doesn't have to play. She would have been out of position just doing the 1. She can do both. She can do the 1 and the 2 and the 3. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what you want from her. You want to be able to just plug her where she's going to have the best matchup. You don't want to have her just be the 1, and then she doesn't get to be as good at the other stuff that she's good at. Like posting up, scoring, rebounding, moving without the ball, defending. So anyway, it's got to feel really good to kind of take a little bit of that pressure off. And I like where the roster is. She told you on Iowa Live that their plan is to move Stuelke to the 4. Ava Hayden starts at the 5. And I heard this comment, Scott, and I don't know if it was like she misspoke or like, but she said Layla Hayes is the best we've seen at that position coming in.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
Coming from Alaska, you just don't know what to expect. But if Jan Jensen says that about a post, yeah, that'll get my attention. And now I know why you might move Hannah to the 4, because you've got Hayden and Hayes. And that seems like pretty good 5 rotation right there. So to me, a Fulcher was playing the 4. If Stuelke's now your 4, you got Mulaney. I still think she's going to be good. You got Feuerbach at the 3, Stremlow at the 3-2, Deal at the 2-1, McCabe, don't forget her at the 2, and obviously Chit Chat. She said she goes by Chit Chat or Chat, so she doesn't even go by her first name anymore. It's either Chit Chat or Chat. So Chit Chat at the 1. So I feel good about it. And I think it's an upgrade. No offense to Aaliyah Guyton, but it's an upgrade over Aaliyah Guyton, same classification. So it's a win for Iowa.
I would say definitely, as far as what this team needs, I think she brings it in a better way because she's more of a true point and she's a quicker player that can distribute. I think Aaliyah Guyton can be an elite scorer or a very high-level scorer and probably a little bit beyond what Chit Chat can bring that way.
Yeah, I agree.
But it's also about fit. And that's the important thing. And because if you would have had a backcourt with Aaliyah Guyton and Addie Deal, and then you also throw in, who starts between Kylie Furbacher, Taylor McCabe, and you got competition for minutes. And I think Aaliyah was so frustrated with some of her misses that she just kept shooting. And it's like, you needed to take it down a notch or 5 notches really towards the end of the year. Don't shoot the ball, just, distribute. That I think this way, it's like, okay, we now know our roles. Our roles are defined. And when you throw on, because I imagine probably Taylor would be the one coming off the bench, just, or Kylie, one of the two. But and then you've got Stolke at the 4, and then you've got Ava Hayden and Layla Hayes. And, I don't know, is Journey Houston going to be healthy? And I think so, but, sounds like she is. So, and then
I should have mentioned Journey Houston. Sorry, I was on mute. Go ahead.
And Taylor Stremlow and Tegan Malini. I think out of all those, Tegan Malini seems to me she can make the most strides.
Yeah, for sure.
She has a lot of potential. I was kind of thinking more from her. And same thing with Stremlow. Just she had some really good moments, and it was like straighten it out. She'll get better. I know she'll get better. Yeah. And Malini to me is the one that this year she could be kind of a super sub, and then maybe the next year she could step in to be that, oh wow, okay, McKenna Warnock type, something like that. So anyway,
exactly.
a lot of positivity tonight, Chad, and
I know. We got to bring it down somehow, but first off, I want to we got to thank Circa Sports Iowa. Talk about the NFL draft. Like, it's one of the coolest. Like, you get so many options for gambling at the NFL draft. You could pick over, under draft positions for like anybody. It's actually a lot of fun. I've never had success betting on the NFL draft. It's tough because you kind of you get swayed by like the pundits, and then it's not real. But then sometimes you think, oh, I'm going to go against the pundits, and then the pundits were right. So anyway, I'm not saying not to invest in Circa Sports, obviously, because they're a sponsor of our show. So give it just go see what they got. Circa Sports Iowa app is designed by players for players, inspired by years spent on both sides of the sports book. One of the coolest things about Circa is they got the 2-sided yes/no future betting. I mentioned it last week when I had the no on the hole-in-one at the Masters, the stick in the mud play. It was a winner. When everyone else just offered, will there be a hole-in-one? Yes. Circa offered a no option. And so they're just they're a great fit for us, just like GameDay Men's Health. So download the Circa Sports Iowa app today. Let them know. I guess I don't know if you can actually let them know that legends and listeners sent you. I guess you could. I don't know. Maybe you could message the team. But visit circasports.com/Iowa and be watching and listening for more on Circa Sports and Circa Resort and Casino in the months ahead from the Iowa Everywhere team. Hopefully I did good there, Aiden. I think I did okay. But yeah, I'm one of the things I also my other favorite thing to bet on is NASCAR. And so, I'm actually pretty decent at that. And so watch out, Circa. Don't give me a bad NASCAR line or I'll find it. Speaking of the draft, Scott, let's get into that to finish up here. You're my draft expert, so I'm just going to lean on you here. When does Caleb Johnson go? We talked about it last week, but now we're the draft starts tonight as people are listening to this. So he's not going to go day 1, is he? He's day 2?
I don't think day 1. I think he's going to go second round. And I think he's got a lot of possibilities in the second round. There are a lot of teams that like him. The mighty Chicago Bears might be a good selection there at either 39 or 41. My guess is maybe 41 would probably be a better fit. But as we know, so much of that is contingent upon what happens before. Like if Ashton Genty is available at 10, the Bears are going to draft him. And then they don't need Caleb Johnson.
Right.
Or if he goes to the Raiders and the Bears at 10 say, well, let's go somebody else. Then they look at running back and it's like, well, does Caleb Johnson fit? Or is it Quinshon Judkins or Travion Henderson? Or, maybe they wait till the 3rd round for Cam Scattaboo. There are a lot of really good running backs in this draft. I kind of think Chicago or Dallas.
Wow. That would be
I,
crazy.
Chicago 41, Dallas at 44. Those would be my first two, kind of turn on the warning light, that this may be happening. As late as first pick in the third round with the New York Giants. I think that's possible, but I do think he's a second round guy. And that's really, high praise. I mean, Iowa's only had 2 first round running backs in its history. Ronnie Harmon.
Wow.
It was the last one, Ronnie Harmon.
Wow.
And the one before that was in the very, very, very first draft in 1936. Dick Crane, a fullback, went to the Brooklyn Dodgers.
Fullback.
Yeah. He played with Ozzie Simmons, back in the original Floyd of Rosedale game. So, yeah, that's.
How about that trivia from Scott Dochterman of The Athletic?
Yeah, I've got all kinds of that if you're interested.
You have the NFL draft down, my friend.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the Bears run. I mean, he would fit in their system for sure. I just worried when Hawkeyes go to the Bears that they're going to get ruined. But trying to stay positive about Ben Johnson, though. I feel good about the Ben Johnson era.
Let's not get too cynical right away. I mean, we know the Bears. It's easy to get cynical about the Bears because, well, they're the Bears, and we've lived it our whole life. But I don't know. And plus,
so will the Bears take a Big Ten player, Tyler Warren, at number 10? There we go. We'll merge the Big Ten here and our Bears.
I don't know.
I'm worried that they will. I like Tyler Warren a lot, but I'd rather wait.
I'd rather
get a tackle or a D lineman. Go ahead.
If I'm Ryan Poles, I go with either a tackle or defensive end.
Yeah.
At both 10
or Genty.
Or of course Genty.
If he's
Genty. There. If he's there, I take him. Yeah. But I think a combination of their first 3 picks should be running back, offensive tackle, defensive edge. First 3 picks because they got and then third round, I instead of getting a tight end, I go get Harold Fannin from Bowling Green in the third round. I mean, he is more of a matchup tight end. He's a Noah Fant, a specialist. Type. Man. Although Noah's a much better blocker. I think Noah unfairly was maligned as a blocker because he was actually really good. But I think you should have him, get him in the third round to go with Cole Kmet as your inline guy. I think you're really good there, right? Because Cole Kmet is nice. He's a decent player. Yeah. But I think if you
wanted more.
Yeah. Right. And so that's why I think Harold Fannin is a pass receiving tight end for sure. Yeah. And so that's where I would go rather than Tyler Warren at 10. I would actually, if I was the Bears, I'd actually go Loveland over Warren just for stylistic reasons.
Okay. Yeah. I just wonder if Ben Johnson will, with the Laporta, positive experience he had with him as a rookie, if he thinks he can maybe do the same with Tyler Warren. That's just, there are a lot of mocks out there that have him going to the Bears. But the rest of the Hawkeyes, Scott, I know we talked a little bit about it last week, so I'll just put give me your final picks on where the rest of these Hawkeyes go. So you got Caleb Johnson going in the second round, and then there are... who goes next? Okay, let's do this. Who goes next among Hawkeyes? The second Hawkeye off the board is...
I'll go with Sebastian Castro.
Okay. It didn't sound too confident there, Scott.
Yeah. I think it's, because I'm looking at this and I'm like, it's about team fit when you start getting into day 3, and who needs what. Because I think YA could fit into that category. If somebody's just like, hey, we just need a 0 tech, we just clog up blockers. 4th round, he's a guy. And Sebastian, and so it's kind of 2 and 3 for me there. I would say Jay and Luke are kind of 4, 5. I think they go, is it the 5th round or the 6th round? It could something like that. I don't know which order. And then Connor is also in that category, Connor Colby. And then Jamari Harris as well. Last week I was a little bit down on it, but then the more I thought about it, I'm like, he's long-armed, he's aggressive, he's a good player. He really proved it last year. And I wrote about the opt-outs and how the NFL views them. And some teams would kind of frown on what he did. A lot of teams won't. A lot of teams won't question. In fact, one person's like, I think it was Dan Morgan from the Carolina Panthers. He's just like, I'm not going to question anybody what they do for themselves and their family. I'm just not. So when you come down to that and you look and say, is he the type of player that, would fit? Yeah, I think that'd be the case. And then you kind of also look at some other interesting attributes here, Chad, is that the last time Iowa had more than 6 drafters and players drafted in the first round, or overall, I should say.
All rounds, yeah.
Yeah. Was, predates the draft. It was 1966. I mean, predates the modern era, the AFL-NFL merger. So they've had 6 several times, but they haven't had 7. So he could fit in that. And then I kind of think Mason will be a free agent. I think Kansas City seems to be a likely landing spot for him. He's visited there. I like that. I think Luke Elkin will be a free agent. I think Nick Jackson and Tyler Ellsbury will be free agents. And then there's guys that I think are in the tryout range. They'll probably get invited for, they'll be one of 20 guys looking for 5 spots or 3 spots. Deontay Craig, Kyler Fisher, and Quinn Schulte will kind of be in that realm.
Sure. Yeah. I actually think, I don't know anything about the long snappers in the draft, but I would think if any long snapper was going to get drafted, it would be Luke Elkins. So maybe who knows? I have no knowledge. I'm just saying, like, if a team wants to throw a 7th rounder at a long snapper and not worry about free agent, go get your long snapper in the 7th round. Why not? The Bears did that with a punter once. It didn't work. Trenton Gill. Jay Higgins is going to get picked, right? Like, he's not going to get snubbed because of his size, is he?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Every now and then, there's a guy that slips through the cracks. You're like, how the hell that happened? And
right.
I don't think he is in that realm. And I don't think Luke is either. I think I think Connor could maybe, but I doubt it. It's just, it's something. Every year there's always somebody, that goes through, and you're like, how in the hell did that guy not get drafted? And it just works out that way. And sometimes it works out for the best. I mean, they hate it. They're not drafted, but then they get to choose where they want to go. And I look at, Alec Jackson, he should have been drafted. And if he wasn't, partaking in some stuff, he would have gotten drafted. But he, to his credit, he went to a place that only had 3 or 4 drafts.
Some stuff.
Yeah. And just decided that nobody wanted to draft him because of that. But nothing bad now. I mean, back then it was bad. Now, but it's legal in most states now, I would say, except for
there you go. Thank you, Scott.
Yeah, I think got to clear that up. But,
I don't want to. People get the wrong idea.
Yeah, right. Well, at that time, I think LA only had 4 draft picks. They were in cap hell.
Right.
And they had their offensive line was in tatters. I think that was when Wentworth retired and everything like that. And so they're just so they signed him. They needed a free agent to make the roster, and he turns out to be their left tackle. Not only that, of the future. He's making a lot of money now. So I think that's that sometimes that works out. I don't know that any of these guys fit the profile of Alec.
Right. Yeah.
But I could see, I if any of them just surprised me, dropped out, it would probably be Castro. And I don't think he would, but it's kind of that way. He's safety and there's a lot of safeties that get taken, or maybe there's not a run on them, and then all of a sudden it's only 15 get drafted and he's 16th or something like that. But I think there's such a premium. We know Caleb will get drafted, and then Luke and Jay just have too much to value.
YA will definitely get drafted, right?
Yeah,
okay.
I think
I was going to say Johnson would be the only surefire pick for sure, but you could also see as many as 7 or 8 Hawkeyes picked to set a record. So it's a weird draft in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not out of the realm of possibility. It's somebody, in the 7th round decides, let's take a flyer on Mason Richmond.
Right.
Hey, he's a 4-year starter at left tackle, and he kicks inside the guard. But that would
just
be
like Wirfs. Yeah.
That'd be legitimate though.
Yeah.
Unlike some of the other ones, but
Yeah, right.
but and I think Nick Jackson gets signed right after the draft. He's,
Yeah, he'll get
I've tried to find some good places like Luke Elkin. I looked at like San Francisco is a place that I think would work, because you start to look and say, okay, who's on the roster at that spot? How long have they been there? Are they old? Or they just got signed? Or what's their track record? And then kind of go from there. And I think Luke is going to get signed for sure.
All right, Scott, great show. We packed a lot in here in these 75 minutes. So I guess we'll talk next Thursday. For Scott Dochterman, this is Chad Leistikow. Legends and listeners, Channel Seed Studios, only on Iowa Everywhere.